Welcome back. Halftime was just outstanding. Ladies and gentlemen, the president of Town Square Media, Atlantic City, and other assets, Michael Rubel, is here. Mr. President, always a pleasure to welcome you into the palatial studios of WPG and early in the morning. Always a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Chuck Malamut is here. I'm hoping, I don't know, but I am hoping he is coming here to initially, before we begin his financial program that has existed for the past 26 years, I am hoping he is coming bearing incredible news that history was made for the first time in 12 years. Chuck can share all the good news in just a little bit. Let me just share with you that this program is presented by Chuck Malamut. He is the head of the Malamut Group. He's the managing director. He leads his team at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office. Their phone number for all of your financial planning needs is 609-383-2010. The following program is presented by Chuck, who is a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley. The information, views, and opinions expressed on this program are those of Chuck. They do not necessarily reflect those of Morgan Stanley or its affiliates. They are current as of the date of this broadcast and are subject to change without notice. Neither the information provided nor any opinion expressed herein constitutes a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. This presentation is for informational purposes only. Morgan Stanley, Smith Barney, member SIPC. Mr. Malamut, how are you, sir?
Good morning, Harry. How are you today?
Good.
You know, we had the pleasure of spending halftime with the esteemed president of your organization, Mr. Mike Rubel, and I asked Mike to stick around just for a minute. Take a minute out of his busy day.
I wonder why he didn't leave.
So he can hear it directly from me and not hear it, on a delay, or hear it on the
rumor, some incomplete,
or
rumor.
hear it 6 weeks from now. But I think what Mike needs to truly understand is that you're humble host of the morning.
Thank you.
Humble.
Just call me Mayor.
Humble was kind of tough to put in there, but anyway, Harry pretty much accomplished the impossible. We have been running.
The president doesn't look surprised when you said that.
We have been running a for entertainment purposes only.
Thank you.
Against the point spread NFL football pool. Harry won the regular season, and then, Mike, we run a playoff pool, which consists of against the point spread and over-under. And as you know, watching the game Sunday night, if it was halftime, you thought absolutely there's no way they're going to get to the over, which was 58, and it did come at 62. So Harry ended up winning that pool as well with just a remarkable 15-5 record.
17-5.
I'm sorry, I looked too early. I apologize. Yeah, 17-5. You try to deliver a message and you can't.
Well, it's incorrect.
So 17-5 against the point spread and over under. So Harry, I will. I was thinking last night, and unfortunately, I didn't know what to bring with me other than myself. So
you mean I took the reserve sign down and you brought nothing?
Well, I have paper here that we can put up, but I just haven't. I know I worked I worked so diligently last night. I just wanted to say the right thing, and I just couldn't figure out what to say at the time. So, Harry, I promise you over the next 24 hours that I will come up with something that is appropriate.
Thank you, Chuck.
For what you were able to accomplish.
There's room on the wall. Not to worry.
It's going to be a big wall.
And Mexico's going to pay for that wall.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for staying for that special announcement.
So, Harry.
Chuck, history was made.
Well, think about this. A couple things happened. It was a pretty remarkable week. Oh. Think about what we've accomplished in what we do all day long in the market. Piercing through 20,000, going up and going beyond that, pulling back, going over through it again. And I know that there's a whole lot that goes on in the production of the Super Bowl, but the first thing I thought about at halftime, waiting for Lady Gaga, and I thought she just was nothing short of remarkable.
She did a good job,
and just waiting for some political comment to come, and it did not.
And she did not, which was great.
And the fact that Atlanta, I think we talked about this yesterday, actually, between the halftime show and the fact that they didn't touch the ball a lot during the first half, they didn't touch the ball for an hour and 20 minutes.
Correct.
And to be on the on the shelf, so to speak, for that period of time, I think it kind of spooked them a little bit. And Bill Belichick just go down in time as the most remarkable NFL coach.
Did you agree? I mean, there was a reason that you and I that don't have a lot of free time, we work a lot, and then we're very devoted to our families, so we don't have a lot of time to burn. I almost bailed out on it because I thought, if I stay up, I'm only going to get about 2 hours and 45 minutes sleep. Because if I stay up, I'm going to stay up and watch the Lombardi Trophy be presented, and and just enjoy the entire experience. I'm not just going to, the second the game's over, just turn the TV off. And you have to wind down a little bit after something like that. I decided not to give up on it. Margie also said, hey, they could come back. Don't give up on it. I mean, I have to admit, when you know sports, and you know sports very well, Chuck, for a long time, and I know sports pretty well too and used to write sports, it's to give people an idea, and I haven't heard anybody say it this way, but trust me when I tell you, they actually, in the entire history of not only the NFL, but of organized professional football, before there were two leagues, and when it was the NFL championship in the first few years, in the entire history of what we'll call the NFL or pro football, when you are down 28-3 with the amount of time that was left in the third quarter and then only the fourth quarter left, it was 95.5% certain that Atlanta would win the game. That's what New England overcame.
Yeah, they were
0.5.
I mean, there was a lot of distractions, obviously, and I'm sure the networks or the advertisers weren't particularly happy as they got into the 5 to 7 minute mark of the third quarter when they pushed the score and they got it to 28-3 from 21-3.
If you paid $5 million for your 30-second spot,
you're not happy,
and your 30-second spot aired during zombie time. Oh my gosh!
But think about on the flip side. If you bought that ad, think about you buy the ad at the end of the game, and from what I understand is the ads are sequentially shown based upon how what you paid for and when. So the end of the game was actually the timeout.
Yes.
Between regulation and overtime. And
then you had a full.
But there was no stop it. I mean, there's you get overtime and they just ran it, and there was no no stoppage.
It wasn't really even Super Bowl rate at that point because it should have been
paying,
over. So it extended their market for the advertising. And and I know, if you're a fan of social media as I am, I watched everybody that I knew on my feed. Crummy game, crummy commercials, worst Super Bowl ever. I could go on and on and on and on. Within an hour. Greatest game ever. Bah, 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 bah. I mean, so it is showing you in the instant gratification society that we live in days gone by, people would not have had an outlet to let people know, unless you called your friends. Oh, Chuck, man, can you believe this? Yeah, it's terrible. You could do that with one or two people. But can you imagine how many people were like waking people up? Are you awake? I want to make sure they're coming back. They're coming back. Because when it was 28-20, think about this, Chuck. When they had to settle for an extra point after, or rather a field goal, after they missed an extra point, you just thought, oh my gosh, this is it's not their night. So then they make it 28-12, and you're thinking, wow, that's why Belichick kicked that field goal in the first half, Chuck, because you want it. A lot of coaches, Andy Reid and others, might have said, "Oh my gosh, we're losing 21-0. We got to get 7."
I think he just wanted to get some points on the board at that point.
And those 3 points were big time.
The fact that the missed extra point later on. I mean, there was a whole lot that went into that game.
When they had to then kick a field goal later to make it from 9-12,
and kick,
then they got to score two touchdowns
with two 2-point conversions
and make two 2-point extra points.
And the likelihood of making a 2-point conversion to begin with is 50% at best.
And so the likelihood of making two in a row is even lower.
So as you know, in Vegas they set odds, obviously before the game, and then they also reset where you can come in, at halftime,
right,
and make another wager if you like. So imagine what those numbers. I wish I had known, or had the sense to look online, because you can get that information. What were the odds of New England beating Atlanta at halftime.
You would have had incredible odds. I don't know what they would be, but they would be incredible because the likelihood of coming back, let's face it, in the entire Super Bowl 51-year era, the biggest lead ever overcome was 10 points twice.
And Harry, look, I know that, South Jersey area, there are a lot of Philadelphia Eagle frustrated fans. There's a lot of Philadelphia frustrated fans in pretty much all sports. And they look at disdain at what has been accomplished, at New England or with the Patriots, for the last 17 years. That's when I think Belichick and Brady started together. It's nothing short of remarkable. I mean, it will go down in the history books, and modern history is probably one of the greatest sports franchises.
Well, and
no doubt about
it. Chuck, why it has to is, if we're being fair, when Green Bay dominated for a number of years under Vince Lombardi and other teams that have had good runs, not in the salary cap era, not in this more parity era. And if you look at teams that have won multiple titles, they've done it with a lot of the same people. Belichick and Brady have done it with an ever-changing cast all the time.
I heard an interview yesterday, Roger Goodell.
Who got booed worse than him? Ever.
Roger Goodell came to Brady before they went on the stage and congratulated him, and apparently, they did have a handshake.
Yeah, I saw it.
And it was
cordial,
well received, I'm guessing. But
yeah.
You think about, and I don't want to spend much more time on this, but think about this for a second. Maybe what Roger Goodell did to Tom Brady was actually helpful.
It turned out to be
to the New England Patriots, because now
them.
No. It gave. You think about it. It gave Brady 4 games off in the beginning of the season, so he's that much fresher at the end of the season versus
it's a good point.
Everybody else that's playing.
I mean, obviously, if you take a third, or what would it be, 25% of the season off, definitely, and at age 39 on top of it. I really believe this. I'm barely exaggerating. If Saddam Hussein came out of his spider hole and out of his grave and went up onto that stage, he wouldn't have got booed any worse than Goodell got booed. That was sustained. It was relentless, and they were not going to stop until he walked down those steps and got off of that stage. Then they went wild for Jack Kraft.
One of the world's greatest franchises, the business, the NFL. There's nothing. I mean, you think about it, everything pales in comparison to what they've gotten accomplished.
Greatest show on turf.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to take a brief time out, and Chuck's financial program will unfold post-haste. Chuck, before we go to the break, and I mean this, there's no sarcasm here, that was a very nice narrative that you did honoring your two-time champion this season.
You're welcome, Harry.
I really appreciate it. A tear almost splashed out of my right eye. And for my president to be here to listen to you say that I did the almost impossible, it was very beautiful, and I thank you. Humbly, yours, your brother, Harry. 20 minutes past the hour, yours truly, Hurley in the Morning, with the official financial advisor to the Hurley in the Morning program, Chuck Malamut, for all of your financial planning needs. And think about that. When I say all, I mean all. Retirement planning. If you plan for vacations, and maybe you want a vacation, but you haven't found a way to get there, you'd be amazed if you put a certain amount away with Chuck each month. You could have a vacation fund, college building for your children, all kinds of different things. Second home, whatever you're looking to do, whatever financial ambition, goal you have, sit down with Chuck and let him present his concept of total asset management coupled with the all-important asset allocation, and you will see a big difference, I promise. Chuck, time is yours.
So, Harry, as we look at what unfolded last week, it was back to politics. I mean, there's obviously a lot of discussion as well with respect to earnings, and what we're seeing with earnings. I'm not quite certain what the Fed's going to do at this point in time, because while a lot of the bottom lines are being met, we continue to see more times than not the top line is being missed.
Yes.
And so now I think the Fed's a little perplexed as to what their next move is going to be. But if
do you think this is very much different at all to the period that we had towards the end of the last administration, where they wanted to raise rates, but they weren't confident enough in the economy to raise rates? then the only thing I would add into this, and I know we keep out politics out of your show, but I do think that the Fed leans liberal, protects liberal administrations, and might raise it in this administration where they wouldn't have in the other.
I tend to agree with you on that, Harry, because if we take a look,
I hate to say it too.
Going into the early part of this week, nearly half of the U.S. companies reported fourth quarter earnings. 3/4 of those companies that reported did in fact beat earnings expectations. Technology, was the big standout. I mean, as you know, your favorite company, Apple, just had phenomenal earnings season or earnings quarter, I should say. But the concern is that when we look at what has been happening, less than half of the companies being reported actually, beat the revenue consensus. So, it's that old the old adage we kind of talked about. How much can you squeeze off of your, how much can you squeeze your expenses, so to speak, to get to your bottom line? So, I'm thinking that while the Fed wants to make that move, that there is a possibility that they might not get those three. If they're talking, we've heard 2 to 3 rate hikes this year. So last week what happened, for the most part, investors spent a lot of their time focusing on politics. The great debate now with respect to tax changes. The ongoing discussion regarding, what's happening on our borders, all the potential regulatory changes as reported last week, with respect to Dodd-Frank and the fiduciary rule. And then that, the ongoing fight with respect to immigration. I mean, so what is happening now, the U.S. equities for the week were pretty much unchanged. Healthcare, consumer staples, which were sort of the laggards, did have a decent week. Telecommunications, industrials, energies, they were down about 1% for the week. So we saw a little bit of shift, and that's not uncommon because when you look at the performance, and yes, it is very, very early in the calendar year. Technology, materials, consumer discretionaries are sort of the leaders of the pack. Industrials, real estate, and utilities, telecom are the losers at this point in time. But again, a month does not make a market.
Amen, brother. And let me share that I don't want to have my cake and eat it too, because we would complain about the jobs market in the previous administration, and now I'm going to celebrate the jobs market. It's another headline in Chuck's financial report here this morning on his regular weekly program. If you're just new to the program, Chuck is here every Tuesday morning in the 8 o'clock hour, all about your financial matters. We can get this in. We have 5 minutes before the bottom of the hour break, Chuck. From a jobs market standpoint, I don't believe I am being at all hypocritical when I say more jobs were created than expected, and I think there's room to be very optimistic about the fundamentals, about the philosophy of this administration, and that it will be the types of atmosphere that will be created that will be conducive to additional job creation.
Harry, points well taken. So if you take a look at non-farm payrolls, up 227,000 in January. Average hourly earnings were up, fortunately, just a fraction, 0.1%. However, if you go back and you look on a year-to-year basis, that represents that 0.1% adds into an overall year-to-year rate increase of job payroll hourly earnings up 2.5%. So that's fairly substantial. And, if we're able to restrain wage growth on a go-forward basis, that we know that will be positive, for corporate earnings and profits. Because, again, it kind of goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. Do these corporations have the ability to continue to reduce their expenses in light of the fact that their revenues, for the most part, are not growing based on what analysts' expectations are? And again, that kind of puts the Fed, sort of in a quandary. When you look at manufacturing, Harry, That also has improved somewhat. If you look at the January ISM Manufacturing Index, came in higher than expected, reached the highest level we have seen since November of 2014. So, new orders remain strong and healthy, and demand appears to be steady at this point in time. So again, we're pointing in the right direction, but can we get revenue to grow? That is very, very important.
We're going to come right back with Chuck Malamut. More of your financial matters to be discussed straight ahead. Paul Rotella was quick to email Chuck. He was very impressed, or text me rather. He was very impressed. Your narrative was beautiful, and I agree. He was shocked that there was no plaque, that there was no crown. As you see, Chuck, that's what I'm accustomed to.
Harry, we have a very, very limited budget.
A velvet
so
pillow.
I think I'm going to borrow Paul's crown, and I'll re-gift it.
Like Sharpie?
I'll re-crown it to you if that works.
Oh.
Okay?
Well,
Paul won't care. He doesn't care.
You could get another plate made and just put an arrow to it and say...
but that means I'd have to go out and get that done.
I'm glomming off of Paul's crown. And by the way, Paul provided also the glass case. And 2 crowns.
We'll have to.
And a velvet pillow.
Yeah, I'll see if I can go out and find something.
What I think would be appropriate is, since no one has ever done it before, people have won the regular season and people have won the postseason, the playoff season, but no person has ever won in 12 years the regular season and the postseason. Chuck, I was adamant. Can I say one other thing? And Chuck, because he's my brother, he knew my strategy. I could have insured I couldn't have done worse than a tie, so I still would have had all these, accolades because co-champion is still. If you win the gold with somebody else, saying Phelps, some of Michael Phelps' gold medals are a tie actually, but they only count as a gold. So I would still have the crown. But Chuck, you know this. You know that I know the person that was behind me was going to go Atlanta and the under. Did I not say that to you in advance?
You did, Harry.
And I said it to Margie 1 minute before I could have changed my picks. I said, honey, if I just change, I'm not going off of New England. I really believe they're going to win. But this over 50, we had to be 59 because ours has the half point, so there's no ties. I said, this is a really ambitious over because the first quarter in the Super Bowl is always, a little bit white knuckle and you're getting your feet under you. And don't 0-0, after the first quarter, first time in 6 Super Bowls or something. But so I said to Margie, I said, I can just win this thing right now by myself by just changing that over to the under. I said, but I'm not going to do it. It would just, to me, be like backing in to the title. So I knew I was going opposite, and I gave him a chance to pick up 2 on me. And I could have prevented that because he knew me. He knew Harry is leading by 2. He's going to go with New England, and he's going to go with the over. Believe me when I tell you, I know the person that was in second. I know him well, and he knows me. He knew what I was going to do, and I knew what he was going to do. And I guarantee you he was also looking at 6:30 when the picks, they're hidden until the game, till the kickoff. And I guarantee you he laughed and said, I got a shot now because I knew what Harry was going to do, but I wanted to be known I knew what he was going to do, and I did it anyhow. So there you have it. Chuck, before we go to the break, could you read this? This was sent to me from a friend of mine in the Trump administration. Would you read that? You can take my phone and read that to our distinguished audience. That's an executive order signed by President Trump. What does it say?
Harry Hurley should never be allowed to sing in public.
Be my love.
No, Harry, I think he's right. I think let's go to the break.
No one else will end this yearning. And this portion of Hurley in the Morning also brought to us by Congress Hall. They're on the beach at 200 Congress Place in Cool Cape May. Let me make a recommendation to you. I think you will love it. I already know listeners who are going. My Blue Valentine. It's a romantic getaway in Cape May, and it involves Beach Plum Farms. It involves an incredible dinner and also an overnight getaway. All the details are at near the top of the website, right below a beautiful picture of Congress Hall. Actually, it's shifting pictures of Congress Hall, like about 8 different pictures where you'll see different angles of Congress Hall from the outside, the inside, of the beach, the ocean. It's beautiful. But right below that is My Blue Valentine. Check it out. Broadway musical sing-along, dinner and show, Sunday, February 19th. So not this Sunday, but next. Sip and Shop event, February 10th, 6 to 8 p.m. It's a Tommy's Folly event. It's awesome. and then the Winter Concert Series that's been going on with the opportunity all winter long for great entertaining events that are happening at Cape Resorts. Let me give you a few of the accolades. Just since 2012, Congress Hall has been honored by Condé Nast Traveler as one of the top U.S. hotels in the entire Northeast, most recently awarded the number 6 spot on the Condé Nast Traveler's 2016. It's the latest awards that they've given. 2017 obviously is just, a month and a week old. They finished number 6 on the 2016 Reader's Choice Award. They've even been higher than that, as high as number 2 a year or so ago. That's out of the top 20 ranked hotels in the entire Mid-Atlantic and New York. So they keep expanding their territory, because there was a point in time where it was in one part of the state, then in Mid-Atlantic, and now Mid-Atlantic and New York. Congress Hall has also been awarded with TripAdvisor's most recent 2016 Certificate of Excellence and voted Congress Hall New Jersey's best hotel by Travel and Leisure and its readers. You're listening now to Chuck Malamut. If you have a question for Chuck, you can get it to me. I will get it to Chuck. Harry Hurley at AOL.com. No phone calls during Chuck's program, and we regret that. Chuck is talking about your financial matters, the market update, jobs market. He did talk a bit about the improvement in manufacturing and also a little bit about the next move potentially by the Fed. Are we going to talk now about corporate earnings, Chuck?
Yeah. So Harry, as we mentioned a few seconds ago, corporate earnings, the bottom lines we're getting it accomplished. So fourth quarter earnings are on track to grow by roughly 8% year over year. Forward guidance, for the most part has remained relatively muted, but in a positive fashion. So we're hoping that a lot of the political noise that we see, hourly, will hopefully dissipate over the next several months, and we can really begin to focus on what's really important. That's growing our economy. So, you think about it, Harry. It looks like we're ready to fire on a lot of the cylinders at this point in time.
Good,
but
go ahead.
But there are some headwinds. The rise in the dollar up until the last several weeks can in fact hurt. Interest rates, which we really haven't focused on, have increased. Especially, I think about. I was just looking at the 30-year mortgage. That's up year over year about 45 basis points. So that has knocked out, a lot of potential borrowers. Energy prices, continue to move onward and upward. Harry, if I asked you, what do you think energy was, the price of West Texas? Where were we a year ago? And think about, I'm going to kind of set you up here. I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint. If you think about where we were last January, last February, what happened with the equity markets? Oh,
that's a good point. Well, I'm going to tell you where we were. West Texas was low this time last year, and it's higher now.
West Texas is actually up 66%.
But prices haven't gone up. This is the first time.
The price at the pump. See, the price at the pump, nationally speaking, is up 26%.
Yeah.
So it's not going hand in hand. But I think what you might be thinking about is the fact that you can attribute here in the state of New Jersey the fact that we put the gas tax increase in, and that drove the price at the pump. But that was not the entire issue that drove the price at the pump. I mean, gas prices are higher, so. That is something we have to think about on a sort of a go-forward basis. And the one thing that we really haven't talked about, things are slowing down in China.
Yes.
And with that potential slowdown, that will also create a fair amount of headwinds.
Could I ask a question of my teacher?
On a go-forward basis.
Could I ask a question of my teacher? Is it fair to say, Mr. Malamut, financial advisor extraordinaire, that China kept the entire world out of a great recession?
I think China, it was very, very helpful. Absolutely. I mean, you think about everything.
That's a fair statement, isn't it?
It was, and it is, because if you think about everything that was happening here domestically,
yep.
The fact that it rolled over into parts of Europe, and Europe now is just starting to track. We are seeing, some analysts and strategists actually coming in now and upgrading European equities.
Here's my prediction, Chuck. China is having a downturn. You're already alluding to that. I think that will continue, and America is going to have an upturn, and then we are going to help the entire world. I'll tell you another area that I'm very excited about. It's not just President Trump saying it, but Congress is saying it. We're going to reclaim our mantle in terms of outer space. So I see reinvestment in our space program that will also be very good for the economy.
Harry, I agree with you. And, if you think about – let's think about everything that's been going to be happening over the first 100 days. Healthcare reform, spending on infrastructure, defense, and veteran affairs, personal tax reform, corporate tax reform, regulatory reform, trade, immigration, and overall fiscal stimulus. I mean,
did you say the Affordable Care Act too?
Well, healthcare reform.
You did say that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you think about
and we have a government, Chuck, as you well know, forever, not just our lifetime, Chuck, but forever. The federal government, especially because of the deliberative body known as the United States Senate, it is sort of designed to move slowly. This is why I believe the president is getting so much grief. It's shocking to the institution and its system at its core for this much to be going on at one time.
Right. So take a look at just last Friday alone, and what the impact was with respect to a lot of the banks and companies in the financial sector of the S&P. President Trump, took his pen out and he signed executive orders, either designed to lead or potentially repeal. I don't know how you're going to repeal it. That being the Dodd-Frank Act, because it obviously that is an act that has to go in front of Congress to be repealed in its entirety. So I think there's going to be a fair amount of modification. And in our world, what is oftentimes referred to as the Department of Labor's fiduciary rule. So while the outcomes remain somewhat unclear at this point in time, again, it's the potential, Harry, to ease financial market regulations. And there's that ongoing battle discussion saying, well, this is the government saying, or the politicians saying, we gave Wall Street a pass and they could do whatever they wanted to, and that's why the world collapsed in 2008. And then we, as the government, came in and saying, okay, here's what we're going to do. Instead of having $1 of reserves, versus what you can lend, you need to have $3 of reserves. So they basically put the handcuffs on and made it very, very difficult for financials, for banks in particular, to be able to operate. And if we looked at the rally that took place starting in 2009 to where we are to date, for the most part, financials were, not one of the leading sectors for many, many years. So now they're playing, I think, a fair amount of catch-up. And the fact that, you have, a president that wants to grow the economy and take the handcuffs off, so to speak, you can see why you're going to have this ongoing debate. I mean, think about, Harry, how expensive it is to fund these programs. And if the president comes in and says, I'm not going to fund this anymore.
Yeah.
You want this program, you go find the revenue someplace. And if you can't find the revenue, we're not going to go ahead and do this. So it's like, I don't want to call it slash and burn. I think that would be terribly inappropriate, Harry. But what I think is happening here is that, the president's saying, look, I have $1 of revenue and I have $1.30 of expenses. So I need to get that $1.30 of expenses in line to, say, 85 cents. So how are we going to do this? And as you can well imagine, you see it unfold. You report it every day. There's a lot of people that are opposed to this because, things today and tomorrow are going to be different than they were yesterday and the day before. I think I can speak on behalf of you. I find that, rather encouraging. And the fact that, on a go-forward basis, we are now able to, I think, do what really needs to be done to run businesses and not have government in our two front pockets, but maybe just in our back pocket.
Good stuff. Chuck, is there anything else that you wanted to share? I know the Fed was a standalone topic, but you did talk about that early. Was there anything else you
No,
wanted to mention?
we talked about that. So as you know, the markets, basically after the election had a very, very good run, and then we're sort of digesting those gains. But what we saw happen over the last couple of weeks, Harry, is sort of a reversal. And we kind of talked about this not too long ago. Last month, financials, small caps, they underperformed. Large caps, cyclical also, somewhat trailed. So what we're seeing now is that cyclical strength will probably reemerge, Harry, in 2017 as this economic growth accelerates as we get into the future. So, we are obviously very, very constructive and positive with respect to equities.
I had one follow-up. You gave a very good analysis, so I didn't want to interrupt because that not only would be rude, but you're our expert. So I wanted you to have the opportunity to talk about the regulatory reform. See if you think from a layperson this is a fair comment. Markets fear regulatory reform when it's putting new regulations into effect, when you really don't know how injurious they will be, how onerous they will be, so on and so forth. It seems to me regulatory reform in the Trump era will be deregulation. It will actually be taking regulations away and opening up the free markets to be more unbridled. To me, that means markets should go up when those are the principles. Your thoughts about that statement?
No, Harry, I think your point's very well taken, but I think that the market probably looks at the deregulation, which is obviously important. But I think the biggest fear that any strategist, economist has at this point in time is the fact that so much was thrown out there so very, very quickly, and it's we're trying to operate at light speed levels, and it's a matter of can you in fact do this on a sort of a go forward ongoing basis? So, not taking anything away from the executive orders and what the Trump administration is trying to accomplish, but I think that the market, and I think again the experts, and I'm not going to put the media in the expert category. I think what they would like to see maybe is kind of slow it down a little bit. If you can get out of fifth gear and sort of get into fourth gear, I think everybody would be a little more pleased. Not to say that what's happening is wrong.
How do you think? I don't ask you this totally at the pure financial level, but obviously I mean it sort of with the potential for financial impact one way or the other. How do you think markets are going to process that we have a president who has 90-plus million, it's over 100 and some million followers now in social media, and that he tweets freely, I don't want to say without thought, but fast on different issues that are happening? We've never had that before.
I think I might have said this to you, Harry, and I'm sorry if I repeat myself, but I don't think I said it to your listeners. Imagine for a minute, President Trump is in the middle of a press conference, and a reporter asks some question, which is totally off the wall, and Trump pulls out his phone and he starts tweeting the answer to whatever the question was, or says whatever he wants to say, and he's not going to get any pushback because he's sending the tweet out. Sends the tweet out, and then he says to the reporter asking the question, "Okay, go pick up your mobile device. I just answered that question, and 100 million people are seeing this before I'm giving the answer to you." That's what I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet.
Impressive analysis.
And what I'm not, look, I'm not a big fan of SNL. But I think that it is rather comic relief if you can take it as comedy. But I think they kind of need to back off here a little bit.
The reason I don't take it as comedy is because they're very unfair to one side.
Oh, well, absolutely.
Believe me, if they would be an equal opportunity, you think about the material they had for 8 years. Obama had a guy named Reggie Love somehow showed up, and he was like the trainer. You could have had phenomenal skits.
Agreed.
About counselor, trainer, Buddy Love. It's like I forget the name of what was the movie that Jerry Lewis played? Buddy Love, and then Eddie Murphy redid it. I can't think of the name of it. Some of our great listeners will email me or send me a social media. What's the movie that both Jerry Lewis, the professor, absent-minded professor, I think
Nutty
it was.
was it
The
Nutty
Nutty
Professor?
Professor. That's
Right.
it. Thank you, Chuck. The Nutty Professor. Buddy Love was his alter ego. Buddy Love. Chuck, this is a good segue, though, because I know you have to go. You are the official financial advisor at Hurley in the Morning, and for all of our listeners, call Chuck's team. They're at 609-383-2010. I don't even need to look at the number. 609-383-2010. I better know it after all these years. But, Chuck, this is not an accident. I think you chose Tuesday 26 years ago to be your program day so that once every year you can be here in the studio with me on Valentine's Day because you love your brother. You're coming back on Valentine's Day. Just say it's
Harry. Yeah, we love
Yes.
you. We'll see you next
Yes.
week. I can't even think
Come
that
on.
far ahead, but
it's okay. But I have to because it's my job.
I understand.
We're planning what is and what will be. So remember, Chuck, for all of your financial planning needs, Chuck is the man, and we look forward to next week on Valentine's Day.
Harry, thanks for having me.
Thank you,
Have
Chuck.
a good day.
We'll be back. Don't go away. I said a few hours ago that if I had a couple of minutes, and I knew after Chuck's program that I would, keep in mind the whole 9 o'clock hour, unless you do something you never do, that would be you not calling, then you'd have to listen to more of me. The 9 o'clock hour will be you on the phone lines the entire hour until 10:06 at 609-407-1450. And just keep happy thoughts for our good friend Todd Starnes, because this is a big day for Todd. This is the official launch of his newest book, The Deplorables Guide to Making America Great Again. And Chris Coleman is going to be on hand at a very important gathering with respect to that. And I wanted to step up. We purchased 2 of Todd's books yesterday. You can do so at Amazon.com or any of the bookstores, Barnes & Noble. I find the Amazon.com because on the release date, they send them out. You'll have them 2 days later. I should have it 2 days from today. And I bought one for me. I bought one for Brother Don Hurley. You can do the same. I might get a few more and actually give them out. I think I'm going to do that, as a matter of fact. I might even order a few more during the break, and then we'll give a few out over the air to the best listeners in the history of talk radio. That would be you. But when we come back, I'm going to give you an example, not what the media lies, but an example that is the Donald Trump that I have been telling you about since he was first a candidate on June 16th of 2015, walking down that Trump Tower escalator. I'm going to give you an example how he actually makes decisions versus the liars that are trying to create a caricature of something that is not true.